Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of In My Mind. And in this one, I'm going to be talking about something Sony is doing to PlayStation users, and it's not good. So let's look at this article. Now, this article is from The Verge, and it talks about Sony killing disc and showing us why it's a terrible idea. So basically, what Sony is doing is they announced that PlayStation will no longer ship games on physical disc. So they will no longer print games to Blu-rays, and all games will go straight to digital download starting in 2028. And in my mind, I have several thoughts about this because on one hand, I assume they're doing this because of the PlayStation 6, which was rumored to be coming out next year in 2027. But with everything that's going on with RAM prices and AI and all this other stuff that's affecting component pricing, I imagine they're just going to hold off on announcing PlayStation 6 until next year and releasing it in 2028. And I think the ultimate goal for Sony Interactive Entertainment is to just stop having to print Blu-rays for their own games. For the games that they make and publish, they don't want to do that anymore. And, let's look at this article because I feel like, it's just interesting. So let's go ahead and read through this. The future of video game preservation just took a major hit. This morning, Sony announced that starting in January 2028, the company will no longer produce physical PlayStation disc, which means that from that moment on, you can only purchase new PS5 games digitally. At the same time, Sony also announced that it's going to start winding down the digital stores for both the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita. Now, let me talk about this real quick. Yeah, this sucks. This sucks because people want physical disc, not just to collect them, but like to have some sense of ownership over the games that they buy. Because right now, there's nothing even close to that in the digital space. You don't own any of your stuff. Everything is a key, a license, whatever it is. And that can be easily revoked by whoever is the owner of that thing. So a lot of people are upset because they want to continue to buy physical copies, and at least for game preservation, they want people to have ownership of physical media going forward. Now, for the digital stores tied to PS3 and PS Vita, sure, I guess. I think at least for the PS3, it's time. For PS Vita, I don't know. There was a rumor going around that PlayStation was going to be making another handheld, whether that's Vita or PSP-esque. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I guess it's time to wind those down and put other resources into present day things that aren't tied to the PS3 or legacy platforms from PlayStation. So I guess that makes sense in terms of winding down the PS3 and PS Vita digital stores. But again, in terms of like not printing physical games on Blu-rays going forward, starting in 2028, I think that's just a terrible idea. And I'm wondering if people are actually going to start speaking with their wallets, because that's been the biggest thing. And I'm guilty of it too. Like, I used to buy physical games a lot. Now I don't. I buy everything digitally because I have enough space on my PS5. And I feel like physical games just take up too much clutter. Now, do I want physical games to go away? No. Like, it doesn't make sense. We have to have some sense of ownership. For me, I don't buy games often anymore. Like, I'm really playing anything that's an online shooter or something that really catches my attention. And Tanzania will play very specific IP that she's been attached to for years at this point. So yeah, this is just a terrible idea in terms of getting rid of physical discs for PlayStation games. So at this point, this is just for the games that they make. This is not saying anything about third-party titles or anything else outside of like PlayStation games from Sony. So I'm wondering how this will affect their relationship with third-party partners going forward, because there's been some outspoken sources since this news broke in terms of companies and things like that just not supporting the idea of getting rid of physical disc for PlayStation. So yeah, I'm very interested to see what that conversation is going to look like going forward, not just from the player perspective, but the partner perspective or the potential partner perspective in the future for Sony Interactive Entertainment. Let's go ahead back to the article though. Yeah, so we were talking about the PS3 and PS Vita digital stores going away, and it says, helpfully illustrating one of the most pertinent issues with a digital-only future for gaming. Once the stores are gone, so are the games. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, game preservation needs to be, I guess, moved to the forefront of the minds of the people making the games, the people who are making these consoles. And you know, even if you don't buy physical games anymore, like, you should be supporting this kind of effort to hold these companies accountable and say, hey, you're not giving us a way to own these games in the digital space. We don't have actual ownership over digital games. So let us keep the physical games so we have some sense of ownership and we can preserve these games going forward. But yeah, it's, as it says here, it's a terrible blow to preservation of the medium. So yeah, I don't know. Let's continue through the article though. In a lot of ways, both announcements seem inevitable. Yeah, I agree with that. It's clear that consumers have largely, though not entirely, shifted to buying games digitally. Yeah, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Like, players, the supporters, the fans need to speak with their wallets. And they've spoken with their wallets, and this is them speaking with their wallets. A majority of people buying games are buying digital games. They're not buying physical copies anymore. So it's kind of hypocritical of people to say that we want to preserve games, but we're buying all these digital games instead of buying the physical copies. Now, I want to know how that's going to change going forward. If people seeing all of this news now are going to start to realize, like, hey, we need to start actually buying physical copies just to show them that we still want them. And I think a lot of the issue is that people like the convenience of just being able to download something. And a majority of regular consumers, regular gamers who aren't paying attention to news like this, don't care about whether or not they own something on the digital side, or even know that they have a lack of ownership on the digital side. So it's like, stories like these are important because they need to be blown up to an extent of, you know, reaching the masses. And I'm hoping that this news blows up in a way that makes it a positive thing for gamers and everyone who's against this, and has everyone saying, hey, we want to preserve games. We want to preserve physical copies of games. Is there a way we can change this going forward? Is there a sign that you need from the player base that shows you that you should still be making physical games? I don't know what that is. Or is it people just slowing down digital purchases and just actually buying the physical copies to show that the player has the power and not the company, you know? because that's really what it is. You know, when people speak with their wallets, it makes a huge difference. So I think, you know, even though a majority of players haven't done this, people need to start buying physical copies of these games. Specifically in this situation, Sony first party titles, because that'll at least show them that, well, all these people are starting to buy our games physically, on Blu-ray. So maybe we should keep this around a little bit longer, or have a way for people to actually validate ownership of a digital version of this in the future, or both. Like, ideally, they would have figured out a way for players to own digital copies of the games that they've paid for. Because inevitably, every platform is going to go strictly digital. Like, it's going to happen one day. And there needs to be a uniform agreement in terms of how they're going to handle player ownership of the things that they're buying on the digital side. So, yeah, I don't know what this looks like going forward. But, yeah, I honestly, like I said, in my mind, players should start buying the games physically. And I know that's kind of hard, especially with two things. Places like Best Buy stop selling Blu-rays. I think it's just for movies, but it's also showing people like Sony, who were one of the 2 or 3 backers of Blu-ray over HD DVD, that people don't want physical media anymore. So this story not only ties to games from PlayStation, but it ties to just Blu-rays in general. I think there's so many forms of digital stores, whether it's for gaming or for music or for movies or TV shows, where people can go and buy things and have them stored in a library to make them feel like they own the thing, but not really. That it's showing all of these companies that they don't need to carry as much or any physical copies of media anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. Let's get back to the article, though. Let's see. In a lot of ways, both announcements seem inevitable. It's clear the consumers have largely, not entirely, shifted to buying games digitally. According to Sony's most recent financial reports from May, around 80% of PS5 games sold are digital. And that's the problem right there. Meanwhile, just last week, Grand Theft Auto 6 developer Rockstar Games announced that when GTA 6, or when the next GTA shows up in retail stores in November, it will actually be just a code in a box with no disc. Now, here's my thing with that. Why are you even printing the boxes? What is the reason behind that? Like, if there's no physical disc, companies should not be allowed to sell physical boxes. Like, there's no point unless you're selling a collector's edition. For that, I can understand. But just the base game, if you're just shipping boxes with no disc inside and just a code, I don't think that makes any sense at all. So, yeah, I mean, I'm so upset about this. Let's go back to the article, though. Digital games are in some way more convenient for players. It's very convenient. I will admit that, especially when you have a decent network connection. For me, I only buy digital now. So I'm part of the problem. Like 80% of people are, at least on the PS5 side. So it's going to have to change in order for PlayStation to change their mind or delay this transition to fully digital. Let's see. As far as like the digital game stuff is concerned, it says you can prep downloads in advance, keep a big library of games on a single console, and take advantage of frequent sales. There are also some notable immediate drawbacks, like the inability to sell used games. Yep. Or to simply share a copy with a friend. Yep. From the publisher's perspective, digital games are more lucrative for Sony and its contemporaries. who no longer have to deal with the cost of producing disc. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing right there is money for Sony. They want to save as much money as they can by cutting down on the things that they feel are not worth their time and effort. And for them, it's making physical PS5 games, which by their own data says that it's not worth the time and effort and money to print physical copies of these games. So, yeah. But a more hidden cost to the digital shift comes in the form of preserving video games, yeah. Given the complex nature of consoles and constantly changing formats, preservation is already a massive challenge. Back in 2023, the Video Game History Foundation claimed that 80% of classic games, defined as anything released before 2010, were critically endangered. The reason for the 2010 cutoff? That's when digital storefronts became prominent, portending an even bigger issue in the future. Our experiences gathering data for this study suggests that these problems will intensify over time due to a low diversity of reissue sources and the long-term volatility of digital game storefronts, the report read. Yeah, or the report read. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, digital storefronts kind of just ruined a lot of things. It's the same thing with like Netflix or streaming services in general and the movie theaters. Like, there was such a huge shift in how video media was consumed and how much, physical locations in terms of movie theaters lost because of that. And with COVID and everything that happened and more people staying at home during that time period where COVID was really extreme and, more people were consuming media, whether it's movies, TV shows, or games. It just like, it made it easier for digital platforms to excel. And, it's just made it harder and harder for anything physical to make a comeback. So, yeah. The closure of digital stores isn't new, of course. Just 2 years ago, Nintendo shut down the storefronts for both the Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS. And while you can still, for now, download games you've already purchased, these closures mean that titles that are exclusive to that particular store are essentially inaccessible to everybody else. If you buy a 3DS right now, you have no way to play the classic puzzler Box Boy. Oh man, I like how they just... I've never heard of Box Boy. You couldn't, like, make the case for a more popular game, but I guess the point still stands though. Like, you lose access to anything from that generation, and you have no way to play it again. In the past, this has perhaps seemed like a minor issue, as the number of digital exclusive games per platforms or for platforms like the Wii U and PS Vista. Oh God, I'm thinking about Windows Vista. And the PS Vita was relatively small. But with the entire media moving toward digital, including industry-shaking giants like GTA 6, this problem becomes more and more clear, or much more clear. Starting in 2028, every PlayStation game comes with an expiry date. As soon as a PS5's digital store shuts down, a huge swath of games will simply become inaccessible. That means not just small digital games, but also major blockbusters. There have been some steps I can't read. There have been some steps made to alleviate these issues. Most modern game consoles now let you carry over a digital library across devices. Xbox has made some notable efforts on this front. And on the PC storefront, GOG has an entire program dedicated to keeping old games playable on modern hardware. Yeah, see, Xbox has been very good about game preservation through their generations of Xbox, which is good. But eventually, like, one major player is not going to be the one to say, hey, this needs to change for the entire industry. It's going to have to be a collaborative effort between the three major players, Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony. So yeah, I don't know how long this will last in terms of things on the Xbox side, but we'll have to see. Oh, I hear stuff outside. If you hear noise, they're doing repairs on our balcony. We were not prepared for this, and we found out yesterday. So it has to be done though. So I'm glad they're actually doing it, but it's been very loud all day. Let's get back to this. These are great and necessary efforts, but they aren't enough on their own. Yeah, there needs to be a big, I guess, program or I don't even know what you want to call it, but something has to change fundamentally to make this a big enough effort to preserve games. For one thing, plenty still slips through the cracks. Mobile games, for instance, are massively popular but are rarely subject to preservation efforts outside of fan projects. Yeah, that's true. Just as important is the fact that these efforts rely on the goodwill of platform holders, and that's the problem right there. I don't know if any of these platform holders have any goodwill or they see the financials and realize that it's not worth supporting anymore. That's really what it is right now. So once they shut down a store or stop putting efforts into keeping games playable across multiple generations of hardware, the games are once again impossible to legally play. This isn't just a gaming problem, by the way. The shift to streaming is having a similar impact on film. Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier with Netflix and all these streaming services affecting in theater, viewings of movies and special events and stuff like that. So yeah, it's affecting any form of media right now. Physical media isn't a perfect solution to these problems. Discs and cartridges will degrade over time, and they usually require specialized hardware to even use. But they at least give players and preservationists a greater degree of control over how they're able to collect, share, and preserve these experiences without having to deal with the whims of console makers like Sony. It's already a nightmare trying to keep old games alive. In 2028, the problem is only going to get worse. Yeah. Great article from The Verge. Yeah, I agree. It's going to get worse throughout this entire period up until and through 2028. So we have to see how different, interest groups and the players and everyone else kind of handles this in a way that's not just freaking out. Like there needs to be some form of working together and forming a plan to make this a much bigger thing than what it already is, so that maybe things like this get delayed for a long time, or there's some policy that's put in place, or there's a way for players to finally gain ownership over digital purchases, and people who want to buy older stuff on the newer gen consoles, even if the storefront is not there, can do that. But we'll have to wait and see. Again, I think this is terrible. Especially, like I said, since Sony is one of the 3 major backers of Blu-ray, it's just making a case for them to shut that down even faster. The same thing with the mini disc, the same thing with UMDs. It's like Google coming out with a project every day and shutting it down the day after. Like, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Are you a fan of digital storefronts? Do you only buy digitally? Do you care about physical media, even if you're a person like me who only buys digital? Do you want to see a way for games to be preserved going forward through future generations of gaming hardware services? Yeah, let me know in the comment section below. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe if you want more videos like this. I know I've been away for a while, but I was dealing with some major issues with our cat Goten. He's a lot better now, but he needs a lot of support. So my wife and I created a GoFundMe for him to get some support because he needs more medical attention in order for him to fully recover, because we think he might need physical therapy for certain things. So If you want to support, you can by clicking the GoFundMe link in the description below. You don't have to. We appreciate if you do donate or share. It's really your choice. We're just putting it out there. So again, thank you, and see you in the next video.